All right. Welcome to Talk Car Wash Connect. Our mission at Talk Car Wash is to connect the car wash community to insight and advice from car washers around the world. Our topic today is claims, costs, and car wash chaos with Tony here.
I'm just glad you didn't butcher that. That's what I couldn't wait. Man, if I got to read that one off, I'm butchering it. A few housekeeping items. If something grabs your attention or sparks questions, even if you see this posted after on YouTube, feel free to question, text, or email us. We can get you with Tony or anyone else. These sessions are being recorded and will be available on all Talk Car Wash platforms, including our YouTube channel, in case you'd like to rewatch them or pull any information from them later. Today, I'd like to announce Tony with the Gibson Insurance Company. Tony, take a moment, tell everyone who you are and the story about how you got into the car wash world.
Yeah, I'm Tony Gaipa. I have a background in legal and corporate compliance. I entered the insurance industry about 5 years ago. One of my first accounts I wrote was a multi-location car wash, and I just from the get-go realized how underserved the car wash industry is when it comes to insurance, and it prompted me to do lots of research and analysis. And now I'm about 18 months deep into helping car washes nationwide try to figure out their stuff.
Yeah, we've been up and down with roller coasters with insurance agencies since the get-go of me being in the industry 19 years ago. So glad to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And excited to talk about our topic with you, Tony, today on claims, costs, and car wash chaos. Everything's going well when you're washing cars, but whether it's a bumper to bumper incident in the tunnel or someone drives into the building or a vacuum post, there's a lot of surprises that happen. And honestly, some education that obviously needs to take place with what's appropriate with, what you should file a claim, what you should cover out of pocket and, all that. So, the first thing that kind of I'd like to go about here is, what kind of comes to mind when we're talking insurance claims here? Like if you kind of talk to the depth of claims that are made at these facilities.
I mean, the number one thing when it comes to insurance, you don't buy insurance because you want to pay the premiums. You buy insurance because claims happen. And it's
Yeah.
just a matter of when. It's just a matter of when. Like that's all it is. Um, the biggest thing we see with car washes, and this goes industry wide, but for insurance industry wide, but historically the insurance industry has been your generalist broker and your neighbor. It's the guy you sit next to at church. It's somebody that you know through a friend, and they write 40 different industries, which is great. The guys are great. They know what they're doing when it comes to insurance, but they don't know the specifics of the industry. And
Yep.
what we're finding over the last few years is that insurance is going down this path that you really need to know the industry that you're in. Car washes are no exception. Um, Generalists just don't understand the exposures that car washes deal with. They don't understand that there's underground equipment. 99% of boilerplate policies that are put in place don't include anything underneath that slab. And we all know
Mm.
in the car wash industry that you have pits, you have lines running, you have electrical under there, you have water lines, you have everything. Well, if something happens, none of that's covered. And most generalists don't understand that. So being a specialist in the industry just covers those bases of trying to figure out. And I'm sure you guys have seen some bad advice given from somebody that was a great guy, because I'm not saying anything bad about these guys, but they just don't understand the industry and what all goes into a car wash. Because as you guys know, both of you as owners, there's a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really funny you mentioned that, and I'm sitting here thinking about all the electrical and plumbing lines that are, everywhere under the ground. And there's been a few times over the last decade or so we've had to dig those things up, and that is not cheap or fun.
A, a good point on this is I just had a recent example where in the Midwest, a guy bought a two-location car wash. Well, he didn't realize that there was pits that weren't being used anymore.
Mm.
They were leaking into the ground. They had no environmental coverage. They had no underground coverage, and it cost them almost $400,000 to remedy to this with no insurance.
Ooh.
Wow.
And it came back to there's a generalist that just did not understand what was possible.
And having insurance, you would have thought you would be covered because it's on the property, it's related to the facility and the equipment, but if you're not covered, then you kind of find out when it's too late.
Well, you kind of segued us into have you seen bad advice from generalists?
It, I don't like to phrase it as bad advice because, like I said, these are good guys. They know insurance. They don't
It's
understand
like ignorance is bliss per se.
exactly. And
Yeah.
it's never the owner operator's fault because they trust the guy that they're talking to and working with and that's selling them the policies. They assume that it's going to be taken care of.
Mhm.
Where the specialist comes in is looking at this because I know you guys have not read your insurance policies. You're talking 600 pages of contracts. And that's where my legal background comes in handy because I can skim through this stuff and kind of figure that out. But on page 343, there's an exclusion that excludes anything underneath that ground level.
Mm.
And you're never going to find it. You're never going to know it. And you're going to trust your broker to take care of it. And that's where these things, when I review policies for new prospects or clients, is like, I'm looking for these 5 main things that I can pick out right away that if you're with a generalist, they're probably wrong.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, you guys kind of being specialist on the car wash side and understanding, like you said, the tunnel equipment, the point of sale, the way memberships work. Again, you mentioned the plumbing, the underground, heaters, gas, fire sprinklers, whatever's going on in the wash. You guys kind of understand the washes head to toe, and I assume you visited quite a few washes yourself and then walkthroughs and got yourself a better understanding.
Yeah, I mean, it comes to also building out these programs with the right carriers. Because if you call the auto owners of the world or the travelers of the world, if you're a generalist, you don't have a relationship with them in this industry.
Mm.
Building this and having multiples, I would question anybody listening to ask their broker how many car washes they write and
Mm.
how many locations. I mean, how many different car washes they write. Because if it's 1, if it's 2, if it's 5, they probably don't understand all the intricacies.
Mm.
Once you do the research and you start writing dozens, 50, 100 of these, it's you build a relationship with the carriers to make sure that for ours, this is a Gibson standard that we're
Mm.
asking for. And any car wash we send you, we expect these 12 items to be taken care of from the get-go.
That's kind of know
Okay.
so you kind of know from a higher level that your clients are taken care of no matter what, as long as those main things are covered. And then also when you're looking at taking on new business, if you're looking at their existing policy, I'm assuming you look at what they currently have, and that's kind of your value proposition of pointing out the things you make a standard aren't even in what they have currently, which kind of creates that healthy contrast there for you as taking them on as a new client.
100%. And on the back end of it, Blake, is if there's anything that's we saw that was wrong, but we can't fix at the time, it's making sure you know. Because
Hmm.
the worst thing is when something happens and I get a phone call and saying, hey, this happened, and I have to tell you, well, that's not covered. Then
Yeah.
you call me, Blake, and you're like, well, why didn't you tell me that wasn't covered? So it's laying it all out there. It's understanding what you have in place. And it depends on whether you have a tunnel, a self-serve, but whatever. Like there's different risks for everything. And at the end of the day, I'm not here and no broker should be here just to sell you a policy. It's really we want to look at the business, we want to understand the business, and we want to be risk adverse and help you make sure that you're covered for what you are. And at the end of the day, if you don't want to pay for an environmental coverage because you don't believe it, which I will argue with you about all day long that all car washes have environmental issues.
Yep.
If you don't want to buy it at the end of the day, my job to you is to say, just so you understand, if this, or this happens, we're not paying for that. So you're not going to be covered so that I don't get a call one day and you're pissed off that I didn't help you.
Yeah, you kind of bring it on the forefront versus just letting it not happen. So, the car washes, Tyler, we operate busy car washes. We believe in high volume operations, but car washes, not all of them are busy, but all of them, have management in place that are running the day to day and handling things, and as a representative of ownership and the business per se. So I know a lot of times managers want to kind of get caught up in the busyness of the day and kind of the we'll handle it culture. And if it's a customer, the customer is always right. We got to take care of them. We can't slow down the wash. We can't write everything down and take pictures. And we'll just handle it. We'll just take care of it. And I can't tell you how many times I've thought of some, or I've experienced it at the wash where someone told them like, yeah, we'll pay for that, and it's a 15-year-old broken mirror, or we'll be like, hey, we'll take care of this, and then it becomes three or four more things, and then it becomes a much larger problem because it was a fracture in the process, and then it can become something that just kind of gets drug into the news or Facebook or social media of people just being like, oh, they were going to take care of this and now they're not, or they just simply told me they're not going to cover it regardless of if they were responsible or not. So if you could kind of share maybe some of the craziest stories that you've kind of experienced, or maybe the top one that you've kind of heard of happening at the car wash in regard to one of those claims.
Yeah, for sure. In a previous life, I ran my own business with a family business, and somebody told me early on when I was late teens that if you make one customer happy, they're going to tell one other person. If you make one customer really upset, they're going to go tell 11 other people. And for some reason, that stuck with me for 20 years. And there's not another business that I see this fit more directly to than the car wash business, because if you make somebody mad, they're going to tell everybody.
Mhm.
If you make somebody happy and they're happy with their car wash, they're not really going to say anything. Maybe one person they're going to tell, right? So PR is a huge thing when it comes to the we'll handle it hustle. But on the back end of that, it's it it comes from top down, management top down. You can't have general managers trying to fix this stuff because they don't want to get in trouble with management or whatever. Like
Hurt their bonus or stuff like that. Yeah.
you have to, for one, you have to record this. And it goes back to why you pay for insurance. Just because you're paying for insurance, if you're going to pay every claim that's $3,000 out of pocket, then why do you have $1,000 deductible? Let's make your deductible $5,000 and let's take care of all those on our own, but let's record them all and let's understand what's happening at the wash and why. And that's where we can come in and analyze the statistics. And I have one really good example, and I'm happy to share the numbers with somebody, but they were just numbers off the top of my head. They were paying roughly $300,000 a year in premiums. They were paying anything out of pocket under $10,000. So we ran analytics of 3 years, and they had paid roughly $240,000 out of pocket. So let's say $80,000 a year out of pocket. Their deductible was $1,000, and they weren't turning in any of these claims. And so we ran it, and we've been with them now for almost 3 years, a little over 2 years, and we've already saved them by turning these in and upping their deductible and figuring out their overall spend, which projected to be the 3-year overall spend is going to be saving them about $200,000. And that's them turning in any claim that had value and should have been turned in. But also on the back end of that, our analytics were starting to determine, like, this is what's causing the broken mirrors. This is what's causing this. And that's just their out-of-pocket cash. That doesn't include all the time that their GMs were spending on trying to deal with these claims, taking phone calls, police reports, anything and everything else. And then all the admin stuff that was happening at the main office that was costing them money. If we quantified that, I'm guessing they're saving $500,000 or more over a 3-year period just because they're doing this right now. And they're not having any PR issues because everything's being handled properly. Any claim that's a true claim, not only do they have the carrier on board with it and the carrier appreciates that, but we have our claims department that is handling this. So it's reducing all of that administrative cost from them, and none of their employees are dealing with it. We have people that are going on site, that are taking pictures, that are doing all the stuff that their GMs were doing that was costing them money. And that doesn't cost anything. That's something that your broker should be handling.
That's pretty interesting. I think a lot of the stigma in the industry has always been, and I know for us, my companies, we have a threshold, and anything under it, as long as customers don't get hurt, nobody gets hurt, we just cover it. We try not to turn things into insurance because the stigma has always been, which there were some insurance companies in the past decade that if you turned in too many claims, they canceled your insurance. They jacked your rates up so high that you couldn't afford it. So we've always
Mhm.
kind of been stuck with they're very similar, but ours is, as long as nobody is, if there's a claim and no one gets hurt, we just eat it. If there's someone that actually gets hurt, we'll turn it into the insurance company. But that's kind of how we've operated for a decade now. And I don't know what those costs are, but I know they're high.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you. You have to turn anything with any injury has to be turned in because you never know what that's going to spiral into, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's one of those that can show up months down the road and my back hurts or my neck's never going to be the same. If it happened, there's no documentation. It opens up a whole, case for no reason, essentially.
I was just sitting here thinking about, a couple years ago, we dropped a wrap through the windshield of a car. Just flex coupler broke, dropped through the windshield of the car. It didn't hurt the customer, but got glass all over. And we made a decision to turn it in just in case there ended up being glass that got in her skin. I know what would happen. And nothing, thankfully, I'm gonna knock on wood, ever came of that. But we turned it in just to be safe on our side. And if anything was to come up, we knew the insurance would be there to step in.
I,
Um,
go
but
ahead.
I was going to say, kind of the next phase into that, when you think about why those claims are so important, who usually ends up cleaning up the claim mess?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the car wash industry, it's those GMs or it's the admin that are taking care of this. And that's burdensome because we all know that the GM needs to run the car wash, right?
Yeah, focus on the customer, not the claim or the problem. Yeah.
We hire these guys to run it and make sure it's running smoothly. And then
Yep.
as far as admin's concerned at the headquarters, depending on how big the operation is, like they have their own jobs too. They do not want to be messing with this. And it flows into what I was already saying, but like it's important to have your carrier on board. But at the end of the day, the carrier is going to read those 600 pages and they're going to try to find that line that says this claim is not covered. You need your broker and the claims team that the broker provides to be fighting for you and be your advocate. And that's what's so important and it's probably most misunderstood about our industry, unless you've dealt with it and you've had a good claims experience, is to have them be on your side because they're going to be fighting for you in the background. They're going to make sure that it's done quickly and they're going to be proactive and they're fighting for you. They're not fighting for the carrier. And they will make sure that everything's taken care of, the documentation, and then at the end of the day, if they write you a check for $15,000, but the cost was 20, like they're going to be fighting for you to make sure that you're completely whole when it's all done and said. And I can't speak enough on how important it is to have that advocate. And when it comes to a good broker, they're going to provide that for you at no extra cost. Like that's included in their commissions. Like that's part of a good broker that they're going to have. So if you're dealing with teams internally or with claims internally, you're not doing it right.
So Tony, let's kind of break that down there because I've operated 25 locations. We had like an internal claims department, people on salary, and it was a whole allocation of resources that maybe we didn't even need. What does the claims team, how does they help? How are they helping the operator? Whether it's like acting like a threshold, so just not everything gets submitted or it gets submitted appropriately or kicked back down. Maybe you could kind of talk to some of the nuances how they operate there.
To do the best job possible, the claims team would know, like, just for an example, if you decide that you're going to pay everything under $10,000, like that's your deductible, the claims team would still be notified of anything, whether it's $500 or $50,000, because what they're going to do is they're going to track that. And that's just going to help over time to help reduce those claims and figure out what the problem is. And I'm talking clearly like physical damage claims or property claims, anything to do with the car wash. I'm not talking comp. That's a whole nother story that we can go down that path a different day. But the claims team is going to analyze that and they're going to come up with analytics and give you like real data that you can use. But on the back end of that, like I said, they're going to help you. They're going to fight for you. And it's going to reduce that whole team that you had in place, Blake, that's taking care of that internally. Like we'll have a point of contact, don't get me wrong, for any questions or anything that they have. But when it comes to any communication between the carrier and you guys, that person's going to be sitting in the middle handling all of that. And that's what they do every day, all day.
Mhm.
So that's their focus. And it goes back to the generalists for specialty. Like these people deal with claims every day. So they're going to know. And they also deal with these carriers every day. So they have a good relationship with them. It's not some stranger. So they know how to work this out and do it right.
Hmm. Yeah, that's I'm sitting here thinking over claims and stuff we've had, and going back and forth with them is a lot. Um, I noticed we had talked about the hidden cost of claims when you talk about like the employee time, the stress, the downtime, the customer trust, opportunity cost, and the long-term insurance cost. Which one of those costs do you think hurts the operator most?
I think we hit on the biggest one. That internal admin costs, I think, is often overlooked. And because it's a soft cost, we're already paying these people salaries. We don't understand how much time and energy they're putting into that. But that also flows into employee morale. If you have a GM that's dealing with a bad situation day after day after day because the claim's ongoing, or the admin that's dealing with it day after day, they're not doing their job. That's not what they were hired to do. Essentially, like it's hurting the morale, which then flows into the frontline workers, right? If they see that the manager's in bad mood, we all know how that works. If you're around positive people, you're more positive.
Hmm.
Um, but as far as an overall thing, I think the reputation hurts the most because if it's a big enough claim and it shuts down the business, but it's handled properly and everything gets back to normal as quickly as possible, that helps your customer morale. It helps the person that dealt with the claim. They're not going to go out and tell 11 people a bad situation. They're going to say, hey, this happened. They handle it perfectly. Everything went well. The car's back to good shape. I'm going to continue my membership with them because they did a really good job and they did me right.
Yeah, and I think too with we've kind of seen this lately, but with as many social media influencers and people that there are in the world, making sure you document and handle these cases correctly because sometimes they blow back and fortunately, unfortunately, you have to put the proof out there to the public. Say, here's we documented it with our camera system. Here's what it entered. Here's when it left. This was previous damage. I hate that this come to this point, but uh, what they say, cover your own butt. That's what the old term used to be. They said it a little differently back then, but
Yeah, they say a little different.
you got to make sure you cross your T's, dot your I's.
Yeah, and there's probably being in the space and handling car washes specifically, I'm sure you've heard, some pretty entertaining claim stories, whether it's good or bad. I know one we saw on Talk Car Wash with one of our friends that was an operator where a car actually completely set on fire and essentially burned the whole car wash tunnel down, and they had to reload the whole tunnel, all the wall panels, but it was shut down, what, Tyler, like a year? So it
Yeah.
was yeah, it was I mean, that'll change the future of your business. So that's probably one of the more crazier ones I've seen. I've seen some cars flipped upside down inside of the car wash, or a guy's leg got stuck underneath the car with it being on its side inside the car wash. Like, I don't know how that type of stuff happens, but what are some of those kind of stories you've heard as far as you wouldn't believe it unless you saw that type of deal at the car wash?
Yeah, let me back up 1 second real quick, Blake, because you brought up a good point that I didn't bring up in here. Um, one of those five major gaps that I look at is business income. It's overlooked by most insurance agents, but when you get shut down for a year, if you don't have the proper business income coverage, you're SOL for better. Like you're just not going to get paid. And so running that business income and making sure that you're properly insured for that is really key and something that every car wash owner should be prepared for. Um, I actually had one come up yesterday that I didn't even prompt you guys with, and this goes back to environmental stuff. So we had a prospect out on the West Coast that they bought they bought a car wash, and the reclaimed tanks they didn't know anything about. Well, they were leaking, and this was in an affluent neighborhood. They were leaking, and about 6 months after the purchase of the car wash, the insurance agent that puts this in place did not have any environmental coverage. Well, the neighbor's house that was behind the car wash had like $1 million pond full of very expensive koi. This reclaim tank was leaking into the pond, and killed almost 200 koi.
Oh no.
And these were not like the dollar fish you buy at the
No,
local market.
those get expensive. We have a friend that is in that industry, and those fish are they're like it's like floating art.
It was a $600,000 claim.
Wow.
They had absolutely no coverage for the environmental. And when we went out to quote environmental for them after the fact, it was about $6,000 a year that it would have cost them to have this coverage. So this is it's absurd. It doesn't happen everywhere, and most of our neighbors don't have $600,000 worth of a fish or a pond that could be contaminated. But it was something that came up this week that I just thought was too good to not share with you guys.
Yeah, man, that's wild. We've seen a lot of the ones I've seen recently have been like cars coming off the road, hitting the building or the transformers, and then pretty much everywhere lightning strikes. I've seen that one
Yep.
quite a bit. We are prone to lightning strikes because how big and metal most of our structures are with their vacuums, and they ended up, traveling through the ground, taking out a lot of electrical parts. We had a we had a lightning strike. It's been a while. It's been a long time ago, but it was about $80,000 worth of damage. So, and the
Wow.
crazy part is we got back open. 4 days later, lightning hit the building again, took out our server.
Now, Tony, kind of something that just came on top of my mind is as far as like the claims you're seeing being made, I'm sure a majority of them are vehicle related, like probably the top are vehicle, like whether vehicle to vehicle or equipment caused, damage or something like that. But secondarily, it's probably like property and building claims. Are you, and then third, would you say it's like injury and people related, or there are other types of claims that are being made that kind of we're unaware of that are more of like a an umbrella or some type of liability claim or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, oddly enough, to your point, vehicle claims are number one, but typically
Yeah.
it's and a lot of them, honestly, we all know this in this industry are unfounded. They're squirrels on my
Hmm.
whatever. The number one claim we're seeing right now that is meaningful, I guess would be the best way to put it, is cyber.
Mm.
Cyber a decade ago was a throw-in coverage that most people got, and it covered a lot, right? And then maybe 7, 8 years ago, it got really strict and it's not thrown in anymore. You had to buy it separately, and it was very expensive. It's gotten a lot softer now, but what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis is car washes getting hit. It's messing with their POS systems. It's shutting them down for days on end, weeks sometimes.
Is that like hackers and malware and stuff? They don't have proper like a firewall in place, or it's someone in China or something like that.
It's not necessarily that they don't have the proper stuff in place. Honestly, if you have the stuff in place, sometimes it still happens. It
Yeah.
really does. And that's what's costing owners the most when they don't have coverage. A lot
Yeah.
of a lot of people say that cyber is optional. I would argue
I
anybody.
would say in today's age, it's not. I mean, look at, I mean, Amazon keeps going down. If Amazon goes down, the car wash is definitely going to go down, and so it's like you got to prepare for it. It's not if, it's when.
So it's those cyber stuff, and cyber is not that expensive right now. Like you can buy it, and you're gonna be good. And the biggest thing about this, and really any of these lines of coverage, but cyber is probably one of the most important ones. That if you get hacked, it's not about getting covered for your lost income. It's not about them getting you back up. If you get hacked and you have the right cyber in place, it's almost like a bat phone, is what my team leader always says. You call us, we call the carrier. They literally call the best lawyers in the country that deal with this on a day-to-day basis, that are
Mm.
out of New York, out of LA, wherever, and they're going to have a whole team jumping on this to get you back up and running and protect you. And that's all paid for under your cyber. But then also any lost income, any issues of going out, any PR related costs, all that's going to be covered. That's in my mind, that's the biggest thing about having this coverage. It's not getting reimbursed like if you wreck your car. It's you have a bat phone to call these guys, and they're going to come in and take care of everything.
I
Mhm.
like a bat phone a lot more than the easy button. Bat phone sounds way more cool.
Tony, kind of to recap, we've talked about claims that happen, but preparation plus the right people kind of makes the difference. You agree with that?
100%.
Cool.
Yeah.
You want to give people kind of a link they can find you guys on, or um, you
So
know,
what's the best way to reach you and
what's the
get in
best way to reach?
contact with it? Yeah.
You guys can look me up on LinkedIn, Facebook. I have a weekly newsletter I put out, car wash related, on LinkedIn. And then you can go to the gibsonedge.com and find everything you can about our company and what we do.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Tony, if you were to leave operators with like a final statement as far as insurance and coverage and like educating themselves, what would that be?
If you have any questions or thoughts, like even if you're not my client, I am happy to help you. I have built checklists, guides, anything you can think of. I probably have a resource that can help you, and I'm happy to help whether I work with you or not. And that's what I'm here for. And I love this tight-knit community that the car wash industry is, and that's
Mhm.
kind of always how I've grown up. So I'm glad to be a part of it and happy to help anybody I can.
Great.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. I know the industry sure appreciates it. And sometimes it's nice to just reach out to somebody and double check yourself.
100%.
Yeah, trust but verify.
Yeah. Well, great. We appreciate everyone taking time to watch and listen. Keep a lookout for the next Talk Car Wash Connect. And Tony, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.